Part two of our San Francisco 49ers all-quarter century team 2000 through 2024. Who makes the squad? There's some difficult positions and difficult decisions for Crocker to make on the defensive side of the ball. Coming at you on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Coach Crucky. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Love and appreciate all the everydayers out there hanging with us throughout the offseason as we get ready for 2025. Taking a big look back this week at all of the teams and a lot of players, a lot of forgotten names from the 2000 through 2024 seasons, the quarter century San Francisco 49ers all-time team. And we're on to the defensive side of the ball. We'll get some words about the offense too. And no spoilers on the offense yet until we get to the end of this podcast, and I'll reveal the whole list. If you haven't listened to the offensive side of the ball, so you want to go check that out first. And just a heads up, there'll be some spoilers at the very end on our choices for the offensive side of the ball as well. Maybe one take back on the offensive side of the ball and some interesting conversations there. Croc, we got to start, though, with the defensive line here as it pertains to the all-time 49ers defense, and it's a pretty stout defense, especially the front seven. It's highly contested. I can't wait to hear what you think about the defensive backs for this group, but let's start with the defensive line. Let's start with the interior of the defensive line. And the 49ers got some Hall of Famers. And for me, Bryant Young has to be on this team. And I know he spent half of his career in the 90s, but he was still with the San Francisco 49ers, Croc, for a very long time, from 2000 all the way through 2007. Never played for another team, and he might not have had quite the stats in the 2000s that he did in the 90s when he was so dominant, but he still made a couple of Pro Bowls. He had 9.5 sacks in that 2000 season. 8 sacks in 2005, 6.5 sacks in 2007, was an awesome run defender, and was just a guy that opposing teams throughout his entire career double teamed. And it was always nice when you were, whether it be Dana Stubblefield or Brenson Buckner, who got to play next to BY, the Hall of Famer.
Yeah, the 49ers, I mean, they have an embarrassment of riches as it pertains to their defensive line. And whether it's the defensive line, the linebackers, some of the guys that we consider kind of defensive linemen or linebackers, like whatever you want to call them, but they have a bunch of those guys. And I think it has to start with a guy like Bryant Young. All right, this is a guy that was really kind of a stalwart in the 49ers defense, especially up front, for over a decade. All right, a tremendous player, came into the league on fire. And there's no list when it comes to the 49ers defense that does not start with him, at least when you're talking about especially late 90s, early 2000s.
Yep, one of the rare players that would make the all-90s and all-2000s team for the San Francisco 49ers, Bryant Young. I just kind of want to go through this 2000 roster, too. The Steve Mariucci San Francisco 49ers at the turn of the century. Offensive coordinator Marty Mornhinweg. Jim Mora, defensive coordinator. Joe Barry. Greg Knapp. Bill Walsh was the GM in the year 2000. This is when I really started to really start to follow the NFL draft, and Bill Walsh was back and he was running the show, and the 49ers trading back and adding all these first round picks. And do you remember when it was like, oh, they're going to draft Chad Pennington, and they ended up taking Giovanni Carmazzi, right? And they ended up like Ahmed Plummer and Julian Peterson, who we got to talk about with the linebackers potentially, and Jason Webster and strongman John Engelberger was one of the defensive ends in this era of 49ers football. Ty Streets, we talked about a lot of the offensive guys as well. Fred Beasley, we didn't give enough credit for, talking about our fullback for the all-quarter century team as well. Charlie Garner, and obviously the Jeff Garcia. There's a lot of love for Jeff Garcia in the chat, in the comments as well when we're doing this team. So Ken Norton Jr. was still on the San Francisco 49ers in 2000 as well. I love the young, hard-hitting safety tandem, Croc, of Lance Schulters and John Keith. The nickname Shakespeare, because he makes plays, right? I love that nickname. That one always stuck with me. Zach Bronson, another hard-hitting safety. Junior Bryant next to Bryant Young, right? I don't know. I have fond memories of this team. This is where I really started to geek out on the NFL draft and really started following things very closely from top to bottom, and was reading and researching everything I could surrounding the draft and rosters, and so definitely hooked at this age for me when paying close attention to the very last man on the roster.
I don't think I started paying. Well, I mean, I always paid attention to the draft, and we always watch that in new players because I don't remember the 49ers drafting Terrell Owens. Be like, third round pick, okay.
Chattanooga.
But man, the 49ers, they just took JJ Stokes the year before. So like those are memories that I definitely have, especially about the draft. Those are some of my earlier memories.
So if we're doing the interior, BY gets one of the spots. Who's the other defensive tackle on this team? I gotta nominate, I think, Justin Smith as the other defensive tackle. And I know there's like a 4-3-3-4. The way we're looking at this thing right now, maybe you could have a nose tackle and do more of a 3-4 thing. I don't think we're going to, because I think we have too many good linebackers we want to put in this roster. I think we got to run a straight 4-3, and I think that means that that Justin Smith, and he was the 5 technique. That's more of a defensive tackle than a defensive end, even though quote unquote defensive end. So I'm nominating Justin Smith for the other defensive tackle spot next to Bryant Young.
No argument for me there. I mean, that was the guy that I would go to, and I view him more as a defensive tackle. Crazy thing for him is coming to the NFL, he was like a 3-4 outside linebacker. Like, yeah,
he's not even like really 260 something pounds, maybe 270 max coming into the league with the Cincinnati Bengals.
He was a 3-4 outside backer, and obviously those are guys that can pass rush as well. But eventually kind of transitioned to just this country strong interior guy who really just wrecked shop. And if I'm not mistaken, made the all-pro team at 2 different spots. I can't remember if it was a defensive tackle and defensive end for the 49ers. Yeah.
And again, the 3-4 defense kind of muddies things a little bit too with what position you're playing. I'm actually going to find him because I want to bring that up and look at his whole career, not just San Francisco 49ers career. But there's some other really good interior defensive linemen as well we could talk about with the 49ers too, because you got Buckner, DeForest Buckner, and Eric Armstead. I mean, it's hard to leave those guys off. Isaac Sopoaga was so good as that nose tackle with Justin Smith when he came over. And so here's Justin Smith.
So yeah, 2011, he made all pro at 2 different spots. One first team, one second team. Defensive end and defensive tackle.
That is crazy. So he came to the Niners in 2008. I thought it was actually a little bit later, but I mean, and he was awesome. And it wasn't about himself collecting stats, even though he was really good. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler with the San Francisco 49ers and really had more success with the Niners than he did earlier in his career with the Cincinnati Bengals. Or maybe not more success, because sack-wise, he was still very similar, but I think he got more press and more pub with how good he was and playing more of a stout inside role with the San Francisco 49ers, listed as a defensive end. But as we know, defensive tackle is what that position would have been for the current San Francisco 49ers, playing a 4-3 defense. The 3 technique defensive tackle is what he would have played. And Aldon Smith landed in a good spot, being able to play next to Justin Smith.
So what do we call Aldon Smith? Because he has to be on this list. So do we say Aldon Smith is a just 4-3 end just for
sure? Yeah, he is a 260-pound defensive end. That's what he is in a 4-3 defense as we're putting this together. And really that's the position he played, even if you call it an outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. So Aldon Smith is among the defensive ends. Defensive player of the year, Nick Bosa, right? Even though his career is not anywhere near done, what we've seen from him over the course of his first 5 seasons is ridiculous since 2019. And so I think that's probably the defensive ends. Right? Bosa and Aldon Smith.
Do we have any honorable mention guys? All right. So real quick, what we've gone over so far. On the ends, you got Nick Bosa, Aldon Smith. Interiors, you have Bryant Young, Justin Smith. That's pretty damn good.
That's scary. That's downright frightening.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I'd put that up. I mean, just the 49ers team we put together so far between the offense and then now as we're starting on defense, that alone, like I'd put that up against any team. Like if you put all from 2025 49ers team up against any other team in the NFL, I mean, we haven't got to the second level, and I don't think there's going to be any drop off in the sense of just how talented this group is. How many teams could compete with the 49ers?
I mean, leaving off DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead, you could say defensive end or defensive tackle for him would be deserving of an all quarter century team for sure. But I just can't put those guys on over the four we have selected on the defensive line. Croc. There was guys like Ahmad Brooks, really good. Remember the Brooks and Paris Harrelson, and then Alden Smith came in and was like a superstar on that team in the early Harbaugh era.
So there's one guy. All right, I don't know what to do with him.
Yeah,
he is like he's kind of like he's an outside linebacker, but he went to Seattle and he was rushing the passer more and kind of upped his stats. But if we are saying 4-3, do we consider Julian Peterson a true outside linebacker?
Well, let's get to Julian Peterson, and I think he might have to be one of our honorable mentions. Let's talk through this. Julian Peterson, I'm talking about him as linebackers. Let's get to linebackers, which is, as insane as it sounds, even more stacked than our defensive line is for the all-quarter century team for the San Francisco 49ers. And then I can't wait to hear what you say about the defensive backs as well for that 25-year stretch of San Francisco 49ers football. Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball, under the lights, golf on the green, high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. And I know we're talking to NFL fans, and of course you can bet on the NFL tons of different ways, tons of futures for the 2025 season. Weekly lines are already up there. Bet on the San Francisco 49ers to win the Super Bowl and so much more. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in the game and your friends are getting sunburned at the beach and you're over here making money on your favorite sports. And of course, we've been using FanDuel to track all our favorite matchups, keep the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions, fun ways to bet live during games. And of course, you got Major League Baseball every day all summer long. So if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Julian Peterson was maybe ahead of his time a little bit, Croc. And he ended up being listed at 6'5", 245 with the Seahawks. But at the I had to go back because I thought I remembered him being lighter when he came into the league, and he was. At the Combine in the year 2000 out of Michigan State. So he played 6 years, and that was his rookie year in the year 2000. So he's prime for this team. He was 6'5", 231, ran a 4.68. And I remember seeing him on the field, the way he ran, the way he moved as an outside linebacker, when he would just like leap. He was a freak athlete out there. And he had length, and he could rush the passer. He was truly a super versatile, unique player that I think defenses would know how to use even better now than in his prime. And I do think maybe we would underrate him possibly because of the league maybe not knowing quite what to do with Julian Peterson, even though he was still a phenomenal player. And yeah, after his days with the San Francisco 49ers, Croc, he ended up in Seattle for a few years. He had his first 10-sack season his first year in Seattle, so definitely used him more as a rush linebacker. 10 sacks, 9.5 sacks his first 2 seasons with the Seattle Seahawks, and then ended his career at the Detroit Lions, but was really good with the San Francisco 49ers as well, including 2 Pro Bowls and 2 All-Pros. He was second-team All-Pro in his 3rd year. In his 4th year, he was first-team All-Pro with the San Francisco 49ers, 95 tackles, 7 sacks, and just a phenomenal football player, but does not make our squad, Croc. I mean, you can say he should make our squad, but I'm telling you right now, he's not going to make our squad.
I get it, especially if you go 3 linebackers, because I think we know who those 3 linebackers are. But man, hearing that, he was all pro, let's see, 2003, 2002, those were some solid San Francisco 49er teams. Oh man, he was good. He was good. And maybe part of it is me, maybe part of it is me thinking about what he would look like in today's day and age. And they probably would have just right off the bat put about 10, 15 pounds on him so that he could use his athleticism and his length to just rush the passer and be that kind of guy. He'd still be a 3-4 outside backer, but he probably would develop into more of a pure pass rusher.
Yeah, I think the league, and just with how valuable it is to be a pass rusher, I think Julian Peterson probably day one would have been trained as an outside, just pure pass rusher. And you could do some other things. And there's some teams that utilize their stand-up rushers in a certain way. But I mean, even if you think of like the classic outside linebacking pass rushers from, say, the Pittsburgh Steelers or something like that, like it would just be a phenomenal fit doing that. But he was certainly athletic enough to play the outside linebacker position. He ended up playing with the 49ers earlier in his career. But he's not going to make it because we got Hall of Famer Patrick Willis, and you also got future Hall of Famer Fred Warner, Croc, and then you got Navarro Bowman. And I can't put Julian Peterson over any of those three guys.
You can't. I mean, and the guy that out of that group people may kind of view as the lesser, Navarro Bowman, maybe had one of the best years out of the three guys. I mean, there was a season there, I believe it was the 2012 season, maybe the 2013 season, where I felt like he should have been Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, and I thought it was a no-brainer. They gave it to Luke Kuechly, but I just thought, like, no, Navarro Bowman had an amazing season. And then, as we know, he went on to kind of blow his knee out in that playoff game against the Seattle Seahawks on a play where he, like, took the ball or stripped the ball and they didn't count it. It was kind of a really weird play. But, yeah, Navarro Bowman, you can't go wrong with those three guys at all. And however you put them in order, but I think he may have had the most special season out of the three guys.
Yeah, and I just think that all of the personalities, all the talent on those teams and, obviously the guy playing next to him in Patrick Willis kind of overshadows what Navarro Bowman is. And by the way, we haven't even mentioned Dre Greenlaw, who would probably be a lot of teams' quarter-century linebacker. And he's just like barely an honorable mention for this group with how good some of these guys are. But he was kind of playing in Willis' shadow a little bit, Navarro Bowman. He made 4 straight All-Pro teams, first team All-Pro at linebacker. And one of those seasons was after, so he had 3 in a row All-Pro seasons, first team All-Pro, then blew up his knee, torn ACL and MCL, did not play in 2014, came back in 2015, was a first team All-Pro again in 2015 for that 49ers team was starting to fall apart. And that was the most tackles in his career, Croc, after that injury, 154 tackles in 2015, even more than his previous 3 All-Pro seasons where he's 143, 148, 145 tackles. Just ridiculous.
Different type of linebackers and different, like, strengths, right? We view Fred Warner as more of kind of a coverage type of linebacker. Obviously, he could tackle. Obviously, he makes plays. But when you're ranking these three, if we had to rank them, right, because we don't, we're just talking about them as, hey, these are the 49ers 3 linebackers you would have on the field in a 4-3. But if there's a pecking order, do you go Willis, Bowman, Warner? Or do you put kind of a NA right now for Warner because his story isn't finished being written?
Yeah, I'm wondering how you disperse them. You probably put Bowman at the strong side backer spot, Warner weak side linebacker, and Patrick Willis middle linebacker. Is that how you would do it? Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. But here's the thing is Willis and Bowman, because this was still the era where you were trying to bulk up 250-pound inside linebackers to thump. But that was the thing with Willis and Bowman. They were so athletic, and they could actually cover for their era really well.
Yeah, well, Patrick Willis was like a 4.39 guy or low 4.4 guy.
He was ridiculous, man. He was a special dude. Embarrassment of riches at linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers, all quarter century team. Croc, we could have a conversation about the defensive backs as well with this group, and it's not quite as stacked, and there's some big names as well, but I think there's a little bit more competition, and it'll be fun as well. So let's talk defensive backs for the all quarter century team for the San Francisco 49ers next.
Can we start with this safety group? Because I feel like there's
Yeah.
a little bit more to talk about with the safeties.
Let's
As a
go
matter of fact, I
safety.
don't even know what the hell we're going to talk about when it comes to the cornerbacks. So,
Well, yeah, I think there's some easy nominations at corner. I think the current group we have to talk about a little bit as well with some of these positions and if these guys are close or could get there in some ways. But I know one of your favorites of the era you're going to nominate. Does he make the team though? And that's Deshaun Goldson, right?
yes, probably one of my favorite 49ers, just watching them play. I sent clips of him in a group chat to my defensive back guys. I'm like, look, this guy's a thumper. Man, look at him in space, and he's taking the ball away. He had 6 interceptions this year, 4 this year, 3 in another year. So I know he's known as a thumper and not known as the greatest cover guy, but he was a guy that was able to make plays on both ends. I want to skip past him for a second, though, and nominate someone else that maybe a lot of people aren't going to bring up, but Tony Parrish. I mean, I feel like he's a guy who has to be on here. You mentioned Lance Schulters earlier. He's another guy.
Schulters deserves to be in consideration, man. That dude's awesome.
Yeah, but Tony Parrish, I think, has to be. I think he has to be on there. I think it's a no-brainer. This is a guy, he was taking the ball away at a high clip and played a lot of seasons for the San Francisco 49ers. So that's my first guy that I'll nominate as a safety.
Parrish over Dante Whitner?
Tony Parrish, that's who I'm going with first. Now, for the other safety spot, we can have that discussion because there is the Deshaun Goldson, there is the Whitner. Eric Reed was good, but maybe not quite to the level of some of those guys. Talked about Lance Schulters as well. There's been some terrific safeties, but yeah, I think it has to start with Tony Parrish. And for those of you who may have forgotten, all right, so he started out his career with Chicago, and then he played from 2002 to 2006 with the 49ers. And in those seasons, 7 interceptions, 9 interceptions, 4 interceptions, 2 interceptions. I mean, he had some pretty good seasons with the Niners and was very impactful during that time on a team that wasn't that great, but he still was playing strong. If he was on more winning teams, I think he may be viewed a little different. Unfortunately, he played during a time where the 49ers were kind of really struggling.
Eric Reed. So Dante Whitner, one-time Pro Bowler with the Niners. He's spent 3 seasons on the 49ers. Felt like more, but it was only 3 seasons with the San Francisco 49ers. Eric Reed was on the Niners for 5 seasons. He was also a one-time Pro Bowler. It was actually his rookie year, and then it kind of got weird at the end of his career, and then they were trying to convert him to linebacker. I think that first year just wasn't jiving with the new Kyle Shanahan squad, and then he moved on and he just played a couple more short seasons in the league. But what about Talanoa Hufanga as well, Croc? Was his peak as good or better than even all the rest of them we're talking about? He was a one-time Pro Bowler also, but first team All-Pro in his second year at the San Francisco 49ers, played 4 years with the 49ers. Was his impact deserving of this?
Yeah, and I think on paper, you really like that All-Pro, but, if we go back and what the conversation was, he kind of tapered off. And I think the All-Pro voting, it was already in everybody's brain that, this guy is an All-Pro guy. But I'd say the last quarter of that season, it wasn't the greatest for Talanoa Hufanga. I just can't find a way where you put him in over guys like Dante Whitner, Goldson, Lance Schulters, Eric Reed. Even though Eric Reed wasn't the kind of All-Pro guy, but he was really good for the 49ers, where I think Hufanga had a good run with the Niners. Like, it was a season where he had a good run, and in the other seasons there were some injuries, kind of in and out of the lineup, a time where he was competing with Tart, taking snaps away from Tart, but wasn't like a full-time starter. So he had the one terrific season where he was really good for 3/4 of it, but I can't put him up there with a lot of the other guys that we're naming here.
I think it's Goldson and Parrish then, is what I'm hearing, because Goldson kind of got better as he went along as a San Francisco 49er. He was with the 49ers for 6 years. And remember, he was a corner, converted to safety, and then really took ownership of that safety job, I think, in year 3 of his career. Then he had 94 tackles that year. He was a 2-time Pro Bowler, and he had a first-team All-Pro under his belt in his last year with the San Francisco 49ers before he moved on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so Deshaun Goldson, I would say, has as good a claim as anybody. So is it Goldson and Parrish, it sounds like?
I think if you ask the fan base, I bet there's a lot of people that would put Hittner over Goldson. But I won't. But I won't.
Would put Whitner over both Parrish and Goldson.
And I would say that, I mean, just you can't go wrong even with the Goldson and Hittner pairing because they were just so impactful. I mean, they were on teams that had this run of just being very dominant, especially defensively, and it was led by this physicality. And those guys, which is crazy because you have, Bowman and Willis and Justin Smith, but I don't know if anyone exemplified physicality more than Dante Whitner and Deshaun Goldson. And what those guys did for anybody that was coming across the middle. We don't remember this a lot, but those guys, I think Goldson, he got suspended for a game for hitting too hard. Like these guys were kind of ahead of their time. We're being kind of penalized for some of these hits. So they exemplified that. I always lean guys that just really take the ball away, and Goldson did that. Now he also took one of his teammates out in the conference championship game against the New York Giants. And I think some people, again, they'll bring up coverage, but I thought he was solid in coverage and he was good. And I think that's how he got his nickname, the Hawk. So I'm always going to ride with Deshaun Goldson. He was very fun safety to watch.
I think I'd probably go Goldson Whitner still, but Goldson Parrish. That's our
Goldson Parrish. You put them in this day and age with coverage is a little different because of how the game is, but just guys that have a knack for taking the ball away. A guy that had 6 picks in the season, a guy that had 9 picks in the season. I'm riding with those guys.
It's the most competitive position on this defense by far because all these guys have very similar resumes and have an equal claim, I think, to being on this team. And when you look at the extra first team All-Pro, I think that's what puts Goldson over the top, really, with his just if you're trying to put together the best resume for these guys, and probably Hufanga because he's got the All-Pro as well. So we got to talk corners then, Croc. Clearly, Richard Sherman's got to be one of them, right?
Has to be. I mean, he was an All-Pro, and I mean, there's just in the sense of accolades at the cornerback position for the 49ers, I think there's 2 guys. I think it's Richard Sherman. I think it's Travarius Ward. There's not a whole lot more after that. There's guys that play well. I mean, I think that Terrell Brown was a little slept on. He was a good corner, not great, but he was good during that time. Played his role well.
Nate Clements was the big free agent signing for the 49ers.
$80 million, kind of wet the bed a little bit with that one.
I mean, he was not bad, but he wasn't quite the shutdown guy I think that the 49ers thought they were getting. He played from 2007 to 2010, 4 years with the San Francisco 49ers. Carlos Rogers was one of the first names that came to mind for the other corners.
Carlos Rogers. And, well, we have 3 corner spots, and I think he did a terrific job at the nickel spot for the 49ers. I thought he played very well there outside of that conference championship game against the New York Giants where Victor Cruz hit him up for, 130 yards in the first half of that game. But aside from that, Rogers was good for the 49ers. And that was a guy that coming to the 49ers from the Washington then Redskins.
Yep.
I think he had 0 career interceptions or 1 career interception, just something crazy where he just never took the ball away. But he got to the 49ers and was a really good free agent signing for them.
Yeah, he had 6 picks that first year. He was a second-team All-Pro and a Pro Bowler the first year with the Niners. 3 years with the San Francisco 49ers. Deommodore Lenoir, is he already surpassed that level? Because we're talking about guys that played a handful of seasons with the San Francisco 49ers. Does Deommodore Lenoir deserve maybe the nickel spot?
Oh, if you're asking Eric Crocker, and I got to build a team.
He's already played 4 years. He has no Pro Bowls, no All-Pros, or anything like that.
And I think that's where Rodgers kind of gets the edge, at least on paper. But if you're asking me to build a team and put together a secondary that I like with that guys that play the style I want them to play, I would have Deommodore Lenoir in there in this slot over Rodgers. Even though Rodgers played it well. I would say that my group, just based on how I like my guys to play, would be probably Sherman, Lenoir, and probably Terrell Brown. And I would say I talked earlier about this team being so stacked, but if there's any kind of downside to the 49ers or like a weakness, quote unquote, is probably because we're taking Sherman for what he was during that time. And I don't think that was the best version of Sherman, even though he did make the all-pro team, but that wasn't the best version of Sherman, maybe one of the smarter versions. But the other teams, I think there's two positions, probably the corners, and then maybe quarterback isn't as strong as other teams could put. The quarterback isn't as strong as other teams could put on the field. And not to say that, okay, you're Brock Purdy, good quarterback, and if you got Terrell Owens and these receivers you're throwing the ball to, you're the George Kittles of the world, you're pretty good. But I see some of these other teams, they may be a little bit more, maybe even more dynamic. Like Terrell Owens carries a lot of weight for the 49ers at the receiver spot.
I got a name for you, Croc, and maybe we have to consider him with a nickel position because we didn't bring him up at safety, and he played both. What about Jimmy Ward?
Oh, I would go Jimmy Ward nickel over Lenoir.
There we go. Okay, so Jimmy Ward's the nickel. Sherman's one corner. Who's the other corner going to be?
Now is all right. Is it Lenoir or is it Terrell Brown?
Charvarius?
Or Travarius Ward. Travarius Ward. Yeah, because I would have used Travarius Ward different than the 49ers did. And that would bump him up over the other guys. In my head, I'm viewing him as how the 49ers used him. It's kind of this quarters cornerback, playing a lot of off coverage, where really, if you watch what he was with Kansas City and what made him so desirable as a free agent, he was a press man guy. And Kansas City would put him on whoever the other opposing team's best receiver is, and he would just shadow that guy, and they kind of do matchup type stuff. And that's how I would have utilized him. So I say, if you're telling me, all right, I'm going to use him how I want, as opposed to what I saw with the 49ers, even though he did have the all-pro season, which was a terrific year. Yeah, I would probably go him. So yeah. Sherman, Ward in the nickel, and Travarius Ward on the outside. Those would probably be my
the second year of Travarius Ward is probably the best corner outside of Sherman, and different than Sherman, maybe better in a lot of ways than Sherman, right? So I think Sherman, Charvarius Ward on the outside, Jimmy Ward, the extra DB nickel to go with Goldson and Parrish, who are our safeties. I think that's his team.
There's the other guy, like I would love to hear some of these other teams, but when you just start talking about like corners, like the Rams, like what would the Rams team look like? Because those early 2000s, now you're including Kurt Warner, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, Marshall Faulk. They had like guys like Orlando Pace on the line. They got the Aaron Donalds of the world on the D line. Secondary, now you're talking about a guy like Jalen Ramsey, like prime Jalen Ramsey. They can put together, I don't know if it would be as much accolades across the board as the 49ers, but in certain spots where you want to be really strong, it would be hard to, just the names I just rattled off on the offense. And I didn't even get to some of the other guys, but
25 years of football, you should be able to come up with some pretty good players, right? And some franchises a lot better than others. And the Rams had two separate Super Bowl caliber teams, as did the 49ers during that stretch.
Would you take, all right, because our 49ers team, we put Brock Purdy, Frank Gore, you have Terrell Owens, and then I think it was like Michael Crabtree and Anquan Bolden. Would you take them over the greatest show on turf? Like the Kurt Warner, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, Ricky Porter, Hakeem, like Marshall Faulk. Like,
that's a scary group. They were records. They were the greatest of their era. They were a record-setting group. So it's hard to compete with what they did in their time, right?
Yeah.
And the Rams, Kurt Warner, would he even play quarterback for the Rams quarter century team, or would it be Stafford?
Kurt Warner, man, 2-time MVP, Super
That's
Bowl
true.
champ.
Yeah, great show on turf. They don't have a good nickname for the new Rams team anyway. So
I think in one of those MVP years, he like threw 30 something touchdowns, but like 22 interceptions. That just let you know like just how different of a time it was.
It was different. Everyone threw a lot of picks back in the day. It's crazy, man. Anyway, so that is the 49ers all-time quarter century defense. Nick Bosa, Bryant Young, Justin Smith, Aldon Smith, Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, Fred Warner, Richard Sherman, Travarius Ward, Deshaun Goldson, Tony Parrish, Jimmy Ward. And Croc, we were going to talk a little bit about the offense, but I won't spoil the offense in this episode. Let's do a little bit of a mailbag episode later in the week, because I want to get to some of the comments about some of these teams and some of our choices. And Jeff Garcia, I think, deserves a mention, and guys like Larry Allen, and some of the conversations that I think we should have about some other players that maybe did or did not make the squad, and get into some other subjects with the current San Francisco 49ers that will hit the field in 2025 as well. So hit us up with any comments you have, any topics you want us to hit this summer as we get ready for training camp, at BD Peacock, at Coach Crocky on Twitter. Of course, you can drop a comment on YouTube, subscribe while you're there, and you can find us anywhere you listen to your podcast. And Croc and I back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.